Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Thank you for joining with us here, Season 2 of Faith in Your Recovery. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, we're here for you and with you. We get the struggle, the challenge, the stigma, the sense of loss. Whether you're listening to us for the first time or this is your last choice, we believe that together we can make a difference. I'm your host, Randy Davis, a pastor as well as founder and executive director of A Better Life, Brianna's Hope. We are a participant-driven, faith-based, compassion-filled support and recovery movement for those battling the battle with substance use disorder / addiction. We hope you get an answer here today that will not just impact your life, but perhaps help you impact someone else's. Thank you for joining us. Our guest today came to us all the way from the northeast corner of Indiana, Auburn. Yeah, you may know it for their cars. Well, you're going to know it for Sara Thomas here in just a few moments. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, why were you willing to make that kind of drive? Why did you say yes when invited?
Well, I'll tell you, the stigma behind substance abuse and the battle that I know so personally well, not just for the addict, but for the families. I wanted to have an opportunity to maybe share, and maybe someone could hear something that they needed to hear today.
That is the goal of every one of our episodes, to touch somebody out there. I believe in throwing rice. You always can hit someone instead of throwing a stone, okay?
Right.
So that gives us a chance to make a difference, not just in those around us, but ourselves and, as you've already said, our families.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody lives in addiction without the village struggling with them.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's been my experience in my personal addiction and recovery, and also working with other addicts. The family a lot of times is just as sick as the addict, and the addict really is kind of a tornado roaring through the lives of the people around them.
Yeah, and along with that sickness, they don't know what they don't know, or how to help, or how to draw that line between enabling and truly making a difference.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned your personal battle. Tell us about that. Let's go back. I know that was a while back, but let's look at that, please.
Well, I would say that my first experience with drugs or alcohol came at about the age of 14. I am the oldest of 4 children. My mom and dad were high school sweethearts, and my dad graduated college and went into social work. He was the director of the Youth Services Center in Fort Wayne, and also very involved in the Methodist church that we attended. He decided to take a missionary position in El Paso, Texas, when I was 14. And so I was introduced to a whole different atmosphere than what I was used to in good old Huntertown, Indiana. El Paso, Texas was very different. And at 14 years old, trying to fit in with the kids at the new school I was going to, we were going over to Juarez, Mexico, and drinking. So my first time that I was in Juarez, I got blackout drunk.
And that was around the age of 14?
Around the age of 14, yes. So my father became diagnosed with leukemia very shortly, 7 months after we moved our whole family to El Paso, and he died. He lost a very short battle. So that kind of set the ball in motion for a lifelong battle with, I found out real quick that I could drink or put substances in my body and not feel the pain, the anger, the hurt that I was feeling.
What did your life look like at that point when you first started? Obviously, then the loss of your dad, which had to add trauma to everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Prior to him getting sick, we didn't have a lot of money, but we were surely happy and loved, and it really was the life. And then after that event, everything changed, and we did move back to Indiana. My mom and us kids, and she remarried relatively quickly, and I went from, honestly, prior to that being kind of a goody two-shoes to bring it on. My high school years would be okay. I kind of, as a typical, sometimes alcoholic addict will do, I maintained kind of a double life. I mean, I wanted to be the good girl I was raised and brought up to be, but that pain and suffering and stuff inside also was very real as well. So I would be a cheerleader. I would make the honor roll, be on homecoming court, all that kind of stuff. But behind the scenes, I was the girl that was drinking and smoking and hanging out with the wrong crowd too.
So there at school, you met the dreams of most young gals, yes?
Yeah. Outwardly, I would say, as long as everything looked okay on the outside, it didn't really matter what was going on the inside. And that kind of fueled, that double life for quite a while.
And then all the factors that go with that.
Yeah. I became
internal guilt and
the shame.
Yes.
I became sexually active at a young age. I was 15, and by 17, I was pregnant. So my senior year in high school, I would give birth to my son 2 weeks before I graduated high school. And I did graduate, but, my life had become just always kind of reacting to decisions that I had made. Life wasn't a planned thing like most people plan on having kids or plan on going to college. I was constantly living in a survival mode of reacting to choices that I had made.
We can't make a decision without there being a consequence or a blessing, can we?
Absolutely.
And you were battling in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
How long did the drinking issues go on before you took off in another drug direction?
So I was a single mom. There would be some relationships here and there, but I worked in a factory. I worked in a mobile home factory. I needed a good job and I needed good insurance, and I was introduced to methamphetamines in the trailer factory. I was in my mid 20s, and honestly, for a girl who drank like I drank, when I was introduced to speed, I thought that was my answer, because I wasn't getting blackout drunk like I had been on the alcohol. For a minute, it seemed to enable me to go to work, be a mom, do all the stuff I needed to do.
Everything speed does.
Yeah, until it didn't.
Yes. So when you got into the speed,
yeah,
did you get out of the alcohol, or did that continue together?
I would say that alcohol was the first drug that I tried, but definitely once I started to use speed, that was my drug of choice. I do need to add that my sobriety date is July 24th of 2016. So obviously there's some stuff that happened from my mid 20s to now. I did meet a man at the trailer factory, and he would later become my husband. He is not an alcoholic or drug addict, so I was able to put the drugs down in the early 2000s for 10 years. And then my drinking picked up right where it left off.
Okay.
Right where it left off.
So you had that 10 years of clean and clear and sober time.
Well, so the drinking in 2003, I would be at a turning point with my drinking. I had lost my job, my relationship with my husband. We were newly married, and there was going to be some consequences there. So I got involved in AA, and I would kind of do that dance for the next few years. I would get about a year's sobriety through the 12 steps and through the AA program. And then my life would start to get better. I'd get a good job. My relationships seemed to be going better. And instead of, giving that credit to God, to my higher power, I was taking all the credit. And so I would back off the meetings, back off the recovery support, and kind of find myself back in that same spot with the drinking and that sort of thing. I did put about 5 years together of not drinking. And when I say that, life seemed pretty good. I got a job as an insurance agent. I was making more money than this high school, non-college graduate ever thought she would make. And I think it kind of went to my head a little bit. And I was having trouble keeping up with that facade. Here we go again, that facade on the outside, not matching the inside. And I went to my doctor, my family doctor, and convinced him that I needed to be put on Xanax for my anxiety and Adderall because I had adult ADD, which I didn't have. But so that really, at about 2011, 12, I was still going to AA meetings. I was still sponsoring women, and I was abusing my prescription pills. I mean, I was snorting my Xanax, and I was running out of my Adderall prescription within a couple weeks, and refused to look at the reality of what that really was, because they were my prescriptions. No one could tell me any different.
You mentioned there how your husband had a positive effect, or at least he certainly went into the same activities you were at that time.
Yeah.
Those negative things. Who else at that point had an impact on your life?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and my family is absolutely amazing. I mean, I seem to be the only one that we all kind of dealt with that trauma in a different way with some different things, and mine turned inwardly into my addiction. My family along the way always tried to help and support and love me. And I think that's why my heart really does go out to so many of the families, because I will say that you can almost love someone to death, and it sounds kind of like, a judgment thing towards the family, but sometimes tough love is the best way to show love. And there's a saying I've heard that if the addict in your life is happy with you, you're probably doing something wrong.
Yes, yes. So how does a family know where to draw the line? And I know that's going to be somewhat different in each and every situation, but what kind of advice could you give to a family right now that's dealing with their Sarah?
Well, let me say, to just forward this to where it got. So when I was abusing those pills from my doctor, he caught on, and they will give you a urine test at your doctor's office, and if the substance that they have you, the controlled substance, isn't in your system, they're thinking you're either selling it or you're abusing it. And that happened to me, and I was cut off. And at that time, my addiction was alive and well, and I was quickly found myself, I would say, within a few months of buying prescription pills from the street, and also was using methamphetamine again in place of the Adderall. Lost my job at the insurance company. Obviously, all the relationships in my life were falling apart and unraveling. So my family did an intervention in 2014 where at some point they had all kind of decided, my God, what are we going to do? They pooled together, their money to send me to a treatment facility. That did not work out the way that they had hoped. I went to Fairbanks initially, and at that time that was just a medical detox. They didn't have long-term. My family didn't know that. The place they sent me ended up kind of being a scam. The woman was running a scam out of her house and taking people's money, and so it got really bad. I ran away to West Virginia. I was there for months. My husband would drive there to pick me up, and I actually went back. And so my family did whatever they could whenever they could. And this is in 2015. The second time I went back, this is not something that I'm proud of, but it's the truth and it's part of my story. And
thank you.
I had ran to West Virginia with another man. And, the second time that I found myself there, I was being physically abused and was pretty much left on the streets of West Virginia to fend for myself. And this is just kind of how God has always worked in my life. But unbeknownst to me, my little brother was 10 miles away at a whitewater rafting resort in West Virginia. Now, I would find all this kind of out later, how it came about, but the police found me on the side of the road. Phone calls were made to my husband. They knew my brother was there. I was driven to a hotel by the police. My husband paid over the phone with a credit card to put me up in a hotel. My brother drove from his trip 10 miles to pick me up, took me back to his cabin and let me sleep there. And my husband drove 800 miles again to pick me up and take me home. And I'd like to say, Randy, that when I got home, I jumped into recovery and stayed sober, but I did not. I would continue to use and abuse all the people that loved me, rob, cheat, and steal from my own family to fuel my drug addiction. At this point, I was intravenously using methamphetamines, and I was a shell of a person.
How old at that time?
So this was 2015, so I was in my early 40s.
Okay.
So
I want folks to know we're not just talking teenager stuff.
No.
We're talking adult.
We're talking adults, and we're talking adults from the right side of the tracks too. I mean, I live in a neighborhood that is a decent neighborhood. I mean, it's a older historic part of town, and none of my neighbors would have known what was going on in that house right next door to them when my husband would leave for work, and I would have people coming in, and we were using drugs and doing all kinds of things that I wasn't proud of. My husband never really kicked me out, but I would leave and come and go as I pleased. My mother would, at that in the summer of early 2016, allowed me to live there, and they were going to kind of try to monitor me and get me better. And Randy, I manipulated and until I couldn't anymore. And I guess why I'm saying all this is because my family did all the stuff. They spent all the money. They tried, making sure I had everything I wanted when I was in the places that I would go to try to get help, the IOP, the inpatient, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready.
I wasn't ready's the three key words and all that you just shared there. And the parent can want it with all their heart for that child or a sibling or a spouse, but until they want it at least half that bad, it's not going to happen, is it?
It's not.
We can't want someone into recovery.
Yeah. I will say that my family, I had been doing this relapse, and especially with the methamphetamine, and it had been going on for, almost 4 years, and it was running its course. They were getting sick and tired of it, and lines were starting to be drawn in the sand. My mom wanted me out of her house, and my husband didn't want me back, but we were still married and couldn't really do much about it. And in July of 2016, I was pretty much living out of a minivan that my parents had given me. Meth addicts have a way of pilfering. I mean, I had more stuff in that van that probably fit in a 2,000 square foot house, but I had been up for a few days, and I was driving to a job I had gotten at AT&T to try to, that was going to be my answer, to clean before hours at this AT&T store in Angola. And I ran a stop sign at a crossroads in our hometown, and I was probably going about 30, 45 miles an hour, and I was T-boned by a 3,500 work truck. And I will tell you that that minivan flipped end over end 4 or 5 times. I skid upside down on the gravel road. When they say your life flashes before your eyes, I mean, in slow motion, it truly did. I saw my siblings, I saw my son, and I remember crying out to Jesus that I am not ready to die. I'm not ready to die. And I will never forget the man that hit me. I was hanging upside down with my seatbelt, and I had no idea if my face was still attached, or, I mean, I didn't know what condition I was in, and I saw this head pop through the window and these bright blue eyes, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know, am I okay?" And I think so, and he helped me get out, and, I didn't have a scratch on me, Randy. I mean,
Wow.
There is no reason that I should have walked away from that accident.
Earlier when you were talking about your brother only being 10 miles away, rafting, the word coincidence always comes to mind, but when it's that big, we know it's not coincidence.
Yeah.
You say, what are the odds of that? With Christ in your life, they're 100%.
Yeah.
And it's just like this. Why didn't you have scratches, broken bones, a mangled face? Pardon me, I'm not trying to get dramatic.
No.
A messed up body.
I mean, it hit right behind the bucket seats, the driver. I mean, had it been seconds of a different timing, I don't believe I would be here. And thank God the man that hit me wasn't hurt,
Yeah.
My husband, they called him to come pick me up. At that point, he's like, I don't have time for this. I mean, this guy's been holding down a job. He's works at one of the steel mills, and he's a good job, and he's, having to deal with his wife running amok and doing this for years. And he was exhausted, but he did come, and he said when he saw that van and he expected that he was going to be either getting in the ambulance with me, or there was going to be a hearse coming to pick me up. And here I popped up from behind this tree like nothing. And he said, "Girl, hell don't want you. You better figure out what you're doing with your life," And I would use one more time after that day. And it got really, really, a day or two after that, it got really ugly at home. My husband had been hearing about some places that I was frequenting to use drugs, and he wanted me out, and I begged him to take me to Parkview Behavioral Health. Prior to him getting home from work, this was a couple days after the accident, he let me kind of crash at our house. I had called my family, called a dear friend who's now my sponsor, told him I thought I was going crazy. I needed help. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to die. And, my family wasn't, they were like, "You know what, we're at work. We hope you're okay. We love you, but there's nothing we can do." My friend and now sponsor said, "Sarah, if you're going to die, you need to call 911. I'm at work. They can get there faster than I can." My husband would get home from work, and he would drive me down to Parkview Behavioral Health, which is a somewhat treatment facility in Fort Wayne. And he dropped me off, and he said pretty much, "Sayonara, here you go. I'm leaving." Went through the intake process, trying. All I wanted to do was get admitted, because then I know what happens. I get a nap and a sandwich, and Sarah feels better, and then but God stepped in again and did for me what I can't do for myself. And I had used about a half a gram of methamphetamine the day prior. And when they did my urine test at Parkview Behavioral Health, they said, we can't keep you inpatient. You don't have any drugs in your system, and we're not a homeless shelter. There's no way I don't have any drugs in my system. I just did enough, So I would not get admitted. They wanted me to come back for their IOP program. Randy, I didn't even have a quarter to my name. I had the phone that a prepaid cell phone I was living off of, the battery was dead. They wanted me to come back. I had no way of coming back. I was so angry, and they gave me a list of homeless shelters in the area. I walked to a couple. They were full. This went on for hours. About 6 o'clock is when they sent me out the door at Parkview Behavioral Health. And just for a matter of, kind of time, I would walk up and down the street there. And for the first time in my addiction, I was faced with the reality. Well, for the first time in my addiction, I was willing to look at the reality of where my choices had got me. And that was pretty much homeless on the street with nothing. And I was scared. I was really scared. And I was furious at my family, furious that they wouldn't pick up the phone now. Now they don't want to help. Now I want help, and they don't want to help, right? So there's a bus stop pavilion at the end of the road where it tees there. And I was raised in a Christian home. My dad was a missionary for the Methodist Church, and I was raised in a Christian home. And at 11 years old, I went to church camp, and I dedicated my life to Christ. And on the floor of that bus stop, I was on my knees, and I was mad. I was angry. I was empty. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to show my family. I'm going to show everybody. I'm going to show myself. There's an overpass where I could jump into oncoming traffic on I-69. And that's where I was at. I was exhausted, 42-ish years old. I had an empty shell of a person. And I'm going to tell you, Randy, I choose to believe that it was God, and I don't know if I heard it just in my mind or if I physically, audibly heard the voice. But God told me, you're not going anywhere. Your life's mine. You dedicated your life to me, and I made a promise to you that I would protect you and I would save you. And you're going to stand up and you're going to fight.
We hear at times, Sarah, you've got to hit your bottom.
Yeah.
I get that in a lot of cases. I don't get it in others. That's irrelevant. Was that your bottom?
That was
your bottom
That was
moment?
my bottom, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. That was my bottom. And I mean, God had to, everybody does have a different bottom. And what seems like should be a bottom for one person isn't for another. And
exactly.
It's been my experience that God had to take a baseball bat and knock my knees out for me to listen.
I've always said sometimes it takes a bigger board than a tube of 4.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Some of us require a tube of 6 or
for
something.
Sure. Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for sharing that. Let's move back toward the victory you're living in now. I didn't say the perfection.
Absolutely
but the
not.
victory.
Yes.
So take us up the hill.
Okay. So that would be, that was my bottom. And I would at about 2 weeks later, I was trying to get into halfway houses. I decided that, I knew I had to do something different, and I couldn't get clean and sober at home. We tried that. I moved into the Serenity House in Auburn, Indiana, and lived there for a few months and was able to get some foundation and learned how to be a functioning adult again, one step at a time. I had my twin bed that I had to make, my bowl for my dishes that I had to do. It was in a capacity that I could handle it. I had to go to 12-step meetings. And I heard early on in meeting that this time that if you want something you've never had, you've got to be willing to do something you've never done. And I had to really put my ego aside, and any of that recovery that I had had before, I still learned some things, but it didn't work for me the way I did it before. So this has been a whole new journey. And part of that, I stay very active in 12-step meetings. I also, during COVID, had an opportunity to meet some of my neighbors who I had always hid from in the past. And Annie, who's here with us, is one of my neighbors, and we started walking together. And through those walks and times, I was able to share and feel safe enough some of my story. And she shared with me that her church does a Brianna's Hope meeting. And it started, they asked if I would share my story. And I was honored, and I did. And at that time, about 6 months went by, and they kind of had a new group of people in the Brianna's Hope and asked if I would again, and I did. And Pastor Tom and Annie and Mary, they said, "Man, Sarah, it's just really good having you here, and we'd like you to be a part of our Team Hope." And I said I'd think about it, and I'd pray about it, because I've found that these days I got to run everything by my higher power, because my ego can get in the way. And I've learned the hard way, if I make it about me, I'm in trouble. So
Yes.
I prayed about it, and it felt like the right thing to do. And that's been almost a year ago.
Tell the folks what Team Hope is.
Yeah. So our Brianna's Hope meeting, Team Hope is, there's a group of some of the ladies from the church and Pastor Tom and myself. We kind of facilitate a meeting every Tuesday at the First Christian Church there in Auburn. And what we do is we provide a meal, and then we have fellowship, and we have a format we go through with a meeting, and we open ourselves up to other addicts and alcoholics and their families.
So the Team Hope's the leadership.
We kind of,
yes,
I would say that's
yeah,
what we do. We
you-
lead the meeting and help guide. Yes.
Don't dictate,
Do
but
not
lead.
dictate. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, because I know there are folks out there who aren't certain of that. Okay, you just told us you're part of Team Hope. You're attending a Better Life, Brianna's
Yes.
Hope. Tell us what else is happening in life now
Yeah.
that didn't
Yeah.
happen years ago.
So,
Let's celebrate.
Yes. So that husband of mine, we're still married. We will be.
How many years?
So October 24th will be 19 years that we've been married.
Congratulations.
23 years that we've been together. Yeah. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm absolutely humbled every day that, my father loved me in a way that I was a daddy's girl, and I always felt so safe and protected by him. And God knew what he was doing when he put my husband in my life, because, he stuck by me, and
That's obvious.
yeah, I not
And
too many
had
people
plenty of reasons
had
to
every
walk
reason
away.
to run away.
Yes.
And so we have an amazing relationship. I have two beautiful stepdaughters. I have a son who's 31 years old, that son that I had when I was 17. God has provided, my recovery has provided an opportunity to heal those relationships. And it didn't happen overnight. There was lots of work to be done. And the biggest amends that I could make to my family was to just put one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, and do the work.
To become the you that God created you to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what would you like to say to your family that went through that with you and helped to support and get you where you are?
There's a lot of shame and guilt that goes along with the way that we live our lives and what we put people through. But I thank God for them every single day, because it truly was the love that they had for me, and the prayers, the constant prayers from my friends and my family, even when it seemed like it wasn't working. It was working. God was having, he was fulfilling something all along the way that sometimes we don't know. But to my family, thank you. To my friends, thank you. To my community, thank you.
What do your next steps in life look like? I know every day's a step in deeper and stronger recovery, but beyond that.
Yeah, it is. I really try to Just because I put down the drink and the drug definitely does. That's the rubber really meets the road after that, because then I've got to look at myself, and I've got to change, decades of defense mechanisms that I've created. So life beyond is just to continually be willing to grow in recovery, be open to what God has in store for me. I think because I was scared of going backwards in early recovery, was very rigid to 12-step, this is the way it has to be. And to be perfectly honest, Brianna's hope has opened up my heart to the idea and to the fact that there is no one way to recovery. There are different avenues. So I hope to just continue to be willing to grow and learn, to be open to what God has in store for me, and to just be the person to my family, to my friends, to my community that I wasn't in the past.
Yeah. A couple of last questions.
Sure.
Here. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this point before I give you the final question?
Sure. I don't think so. I would say to the families, because I kind of, went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but set boundaries, tough boundaries. I will tell you what, when I was getting what I wanted, I was not going to change. And while there is breath, there is hope. I think my family had come to the conclusion that she may not make it. That next phone call may be the phone call that she is not with us anymore. Yeah. And ultimately it had to be my choice to get better. So, there's
set boundaries and be consistent with those. Yes.
And get support for yourselves.
Sure.
There's support systems out there for the families where they can learn from other families struggling with the same things, how to set those boundaries in a healthy way.
Yes. One final question.
Sure.
As you know, the name of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. Define that title in your words, please.
Sure.
Describe that.
Well, I will tell you that without the love of Jesus Christ and that instance that I told you about in that bus stop where, God did for me what I couldn't do for myself, and just reminding me that He's always been here. Faith in my recovery is faith that God can do for me what I can't do for myself. And a lot of times, God showing up for me is through other people and other human beings. And that was hard for me. I don't, addicts and alcoholics don't like to trust people, but God shows up when we least expect it in each other.
When we're the worst, He shows up at His best.
He sure does.
I've always loved that thought. Well, listen, Sara, thank you. Thank you for the drive here. Thank you to the friends that came along with you. Thank you for your willingness to be honest and open with your story. We don't believe anybody's come this far to only come this far. We believe your answer, your healing, your recovery may be just around the corner or possibly in our next episode. Have faith in your recovery by having faith in yourself, your journey, and above all, God. Stay in the battle. God bless.